Warfare brings out the most awful things about human beings. But when the last target is achieved and the bullets stop flying in pieces, it is our responsibility to hold those accountable. However, the Japanese government hasn't fully accepted responsibility for crimes committed during the war throughout the years, since it was the end of the most crushing war in human history. We explore the terrible actions of the Imperial Japanese Empire in this video. Welcome to the Bleeding Truth YouTube channel. To know about some of the scary crime facts, click the subscribe button, and make sure to hit the bell icon if you don't want to miss out on our new videos. Comfort women. In the closing days of World War II, the Japanese military police were busy destroying records as the Allies advanced closer to Japan. Neither POW records nor war plans, though. They were destroying documents related to comfort women. Between 100,000 and 200,000 women and girls were trafficked around the Japanese Empire from 1932 to 1945 to facilities with odd names like comfort stations. There, Japanese soldiers and commanders repeatedly beat and violated them, sometimes up to 40 times each day. Typically, these enslaved women were made to work in the stations for a brief period of time. After that, the Japanese found their bodies to be too damaged to be very useful. Prostitutes from Japan voluntarily followed the army during the early stages of Japan's war to conquer the Asia-Pacific in order to staff the brothels set up for the officers. Army leaders desired more, but the supply of interested Japanese volunteers quickly went low. The propaganda machine was turned on. Many young female workers were drawn to the excellent incomes offered for clerical, industrial, and nursing employment, which were advertised. These women were being used as sexual slaves. The Japanese switched to paying neighborhood gangs for a consistent supply of women as word of the scam spread. These unfortunate individuals were taken off the street while returning from work or from in front of their schools. From China, the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaya, Thailand, Burma, New Guinea, Hong Kong, Macau, French Indochina, the Netherlands, and Australia, women and girls as young as 11 were kidnapped. But Koreans were the majority. They were taken kidnapped by thugs or troops, and then repeatedly raped. Even though the physical abuse they suffered frequently resulted in infections, soldiers were the only ones who had access to life-saving medication. Many of these mothers and girls became infertile by the harm done to them. Several political groups openly rejected. Some politicians, like former Osaka Mayor Toru Hashimoto, attempt to defend the atrocity that occurred. Worse than the SS. There is no fate that could be worse than what we have just described, but the Japanese were able to achieve exactly what they wanted. Unofficially known as Unit 731, these were the doctors from hell who worked for the Guangdong Army's Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. Unit 731, based in northern China, conducted experiments on kidnapping civilians and POWs. The terrible war criminals act pretending medical professionals. They were curious about how diseases affected the human body when subjected to various circumstances. Healthy men, women, and children were deliberately infected with crippling diseases, and while they were still alive, they were cut open to watch the disease progress. The insane people forced a healthy prisoner into having sexual activity with an uninfected prisoner under the threat of being shot in order to study the syphilis sickness. But things improved. To conduct experiments on both the mothers and the children, they forcibly pregnant women. Unit 731 starved, burned, and electrocuted them, poisoned them, replaced their blood with animal blood, injected them with seawater, tested experimental weaponry on them, and spun them to death in a centrifuge. Creating a disease they could deploy to wage biological warfare on Americans was one of Unit 731's objectives. General Ishii, the head of the force, intends to start a pandemic by dropping fleas that carry the disease into the western United States. He intended to force the Americans to reconsider invading Japan. The worst aspect of Unit 731's narrative is by far this. The Americans allowed them to get away with it, not that they carried out the most psychopathically cruel experiments imaginable. General MacArthur covertly agreed to protect all the nasty nutters of Unit 731 from war crimes prosecution in exchange for their illegal research. Their research was later discovered to be incompetent and to have no real medical value, and they all managed to avoid prosecution. Other Japanese atrocities. These two instances were arguably the most unacceptable, but Japanese Empire soldiers committed terrible war crimes everywhere they went. There was the Nanjing Massacre, where between 40,000 and 300,000 civilians were killed by the marauding Japanese troops. One of the worst cases of mass rape in human history was committed by Japanese soldiers after they had killed and captured almost all of the men of military age. Women have sometimes been raped to death. As part of the kill all, loot all, burn all, the 3-all policy, numerous more killings occurred in China. About 2.7 million Chinese civilians were killed because of it, some died because of chemical weapons assaults. Emperor Hirohito personally approved the policy. The famous Yasukuni. How many more people are responsible as well if Emperor Hirohito was aware of all of the crimes his troops were doing? This is a problem that modern Japan is still trying to solve, and it frequently comes up in national discussions. Historically significant Yasukuni Shrine serves as a national war memorial for Japanese servicemen who lost their lives in battle between 1868 and 1954. On the shrine, more than 2 million names are memorialized. 1,068 of them people have been convicted of war crimes. Additionally, 14 Class A war criminals are listed. These men were found convicted of planning the operations that killed millions of people. At the shrine, their actions are not acknowledged, and to make matters worse, the story is purposefully confused in the museum there. It shows Chinese citizens not running for their lives but rather welcoming the Japanese troops as liberators. Although it is widely known that the far right aggressively promoted what is often referred to as the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity War, these ultranationalists continue to hold power in contemporary Japan. Now do you know, truth behind Japanese atrocities? Thanks for being to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and tell us what you think about this video below in the comment section. Thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next video with a more exciting crime case.